You're watching the Lite version of The Piece of Persistence. Visit patreon.com, that's patreon.com/Piece of Persistence for complete access with double the content and 0 ads. Hi, and welcome to The Piece of Persistence, the show where we seek to uncover the keys to happiness and success one honest conversation at a time. I'm your host, Abigail Wright, and today we're coming to you from the Aikido Schools of New Jersey with George Walden, who practices Aikido and also assistant teaches here. George, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
I really appreciate it. George was born in Washington, D.C. and raised in the nearby suburb of Upper Marlboro, Maryland. With close ties to his family, he still gets together with his 2 brothers and 2 sisters and his nieces and nephews a couple of times each year for family gatherings. George completed a Bachelor of Science degree at Morgan State University in 1972 in Baltimore, Maryland. And following his graduation, he was offered a position with the U.S. Food and Drug Administration in Newark, New Jersey, and continued to work for the FDA for 25 and a half years as a consumer safety officer. He was fortunate to retire early from the FDA in 1997 and began his career with Warner Lambert, which is later known as Pfizer Pharmaceuticals, Inc., as a corporate quality auditor. George worked for Warner Lambert/Pfizer for 17 years and traveled to nearly 40 countries around the world. He retired from Pfizer in April 2015. Now George enjoys practicing Aikido, practicing yoga, playing golf, reading, and spending time with his friends and family. George, I know we haven't fully talked about this, but I actually went to University of Maryland and studied there, so I'm really familiar with College Park and the surrounding area of Prince George's County in DC. I'm just curious, what was it like for you growing up in that area at the time that you did?
When I think about those years, they were really fun years. We weren't wealthy by any stretch of the imagination, but we had what we needed growing up. I was the second of 5 children born, and after I was born, prior to that, I should say, both my mother and father worked. And after I was born, my mother and father made the agreement that only my father would work and my mother would take care of the home. And so I grew up with my 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and we always felt secure. My dad was very hardworking. My mother always took care of us and sacrificed to see that we had what we needed. Dinner was big. We would always, the whole family would sit down together and eat, and I think that was one of the reasons that we sort of stayed together. It sort of kept us together. The community was sort of a quiet, peaceful community. Not a whole lot happened. There wasn't a lot to do there, but we as kids made our own things to do. When school was out during the summer, we would get softball games with the kids in the neighborhood, football games, basketball games, and we would find ways to keep ourselves busy. In the winter, we would go sledding. We built go-karts and had races. So, we did that. We would come up with creative ways to keep ourselves occupied.
So it seems like growing up and in your jobs and also with all the sports that you do, the community is really important to you. How has that enhanced your life?
I think maybe it has changed or helped me see people differently or see people as valuable. I had some interesting experiences. Certainly I remember a few from FDA where when you speak with people, I can remember, as I was telling you, I was a small business representative and I had to help companies comply. I had a lot of phone conversations and I would do a lot of, assistance over the phone, but then I would also, some companies would invite me to come out and sit down with them and, take a look at their operations and so forth. And there were a couple of vivid examples where, the person on the phone would say some derogatory things or, about, minorities or women and complain about the government and so forth.
Mm.
But of course, I didn't get upset or anything. I would just, try to calm them down and say, well, look, this is actually the way it is. And a few of those times I got invited out there, and I was wondering, what's going to happen? This guy said all these things to me. When he sees me, what is he going to think?
Wow.
And I can remember, when he opened the door and he saw me, and he just stared for a long time. And I was wondering, I said, well, can I come in? And he said, all right, sure, come in. So, he just kept looking at me, sat me down. But to make a long story short, as I sat down and explained the regulations to him, and as a matter of fact, for his device, he was going to be exempt from a lot of the regulations, and he was happy to learn that. To make a long story short, once the guy got to know me, it was difficult for me to get away from him. It was like I became his best friend. He was inviting me to dinner. He found out I played golf. He gave me tips on my putting. He had written, a couple of books. He gave me books. So I say all this to say that, there's a lot of hatred and fear and animosity in the world. But, people are people. And I think a lot of it stems from the fact that, we don't know each other. We don't try to get to know each other. But once we, learn a little bit about each other and get to know each other, we find that we're all the same, there's no reason for that.
Yeah.
And I think, when I look back, my community upbringing contributed to that.
What's your perspective on what's happening in today's society between what's going on in our political climate and the extreme polarization of different viewpoints and then the sort of resurgence of overt racism? Is any of this new? It's
probably always been there, but now, especially with the rhetoric that comes out of our leadership, people feel emboldened to come forth with it and and be out front with it and maybe even, are encouraged by it.
How have you reacted to it, and what do you think we can do better as individuals to improve our society?
My motto is to let people have their space, because I think about, I told you about some things that I ran into when I was with FDA, and, people may think they hate you or dislike you because of what they perceive or what they think about you. But then when they get to know you, usually your first impression isn't always the right one. I mean, because of the way someone looks or, acts or whatever, but once you get to know that person, you find out there's really no reason for you to hate them.
Yeah. What does happiness mean to you in your life?
That's a good one. I think happiness means being able to being able to do the things or doing the things that you want to do. Yet I think I'd be very unhappy if I couldn't do Aikido. This has sort of become my life. Or if I couldn't get together with my brothers and friends from time to time and play golf. I like being around people, and if I couldn't get together with people. My dad's life was, work, the family, the house, and he'd take vacation. He worked, and then, he built up all this vacation leave. He'd come to the point that he had to use it, So what would we do? Vacation, he would work on the house. Then we would, visit grandparents or do something, or fish. That was his life. And he retired
I guess he retired just before he was 60 years old, and that was the time that he retired to be around my mother a little more and to help her a little more. And after a year or two, he couldn't take it because that was his life. I mean, he had friends, he had the neighbors, but he wasn't the type that did stuff, going, say take a weekend and do something with the neighbors or go out and party. He wasn't that type. He was a homebody, mostly. So, we were all gone, and then the work was gone, so he had to go back to work. So, you have to have something to keep you going.
Yeah. Have you always been a pretty content person, or have you had to work at it?
I think for most of my life, when I think back, I have been pretty content because I've done things to keep myself interested in things. I've done things that I was interested in, and that's sort of what kept me content.
It seems to be the key for you.
Yeah.
And if there were one thing you'd like the world to see differently, what would it be?
I would like there to be more respect and more acceptance of humankind, of each other. Everybody doesn't have to be the same. We're all different, and that's really what makes the world go around. Everybody has to be. If everyone were the same, that'd be kind of boring. You sort of know what to expect. Yeah.
George, thank you so much for coming on the show today and spending time with us. It's been really wonderful having you on the show.
You're welcome. It has been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. Thanks. I really appreciate it. And thank you for joining us today on The Piece of Persistence. As always, if you have a minute, just take that minute to share us with a friend or rate or review us on Apple Podcasts or IMDb, or share us a comment about how you liked the show today on YouTube. Also, if you happen to know anybody who is extraordinarily and genuinely happy and has had some success in their lives, those people are actually really hard to find. So do let us know at pieceofpersistence@gmail.com. I really appreciate you and everything that you contribute to the show and sharing us with your friends. I know I say this all the time, but each time you do that, it really helps new people discover the show at a time that I think positive media really deserves to be discovered and celebrated. So thank you again for joining us, and remember to subscribe and join us next time on The Piece of Persistence to find more great content to help you find the happiness and success in your life. Thanks for joining George Walden and I on this light episode of The Piece of Persistence. To hear about his experiences with the FDA and Pfizer, the value in a single life, George's key to happiness, and more, find the full version of all our episodes at www.patreon.com, that's patreon.com/pieceofpersistence, or visit us there if you'd just like to support our show. We'll see you there.